today we're unveiling what we call Trustero intelligence. In short, this empowers users to ask GRC questions in plain language and get targeted contextual answers without having to dig through evidence folders, policy binders, past audit notes, or maybe it's even doing queries into IT systems that you have. This system is great at helping you find needles in haystacks. So it can search through piles and piles of data to get you answers with sourcing. And the way it does this is in a chat-like interface. So anybody who's used a chat system, like a Chat GPT or Gemini, this will feel very familiar to you, but it's got some things that make it especially well suited to this GRC domain. So in particular, it has to do with the data that we are able to source, and then your ability to actually configure which data it will go and look at. And so building on that foundation of all the data that we've got in here, we've built this interactive capability that allows you to essentially interrogate all of this GRC data that's in your system and actually have a back and forth dialogue with the system. So I'm going to jump in. Just like any other chat system, you've got previous chats over here. What's quite different about us is you can also lens in on particular things, and I'll show you this a little bit later. But for example, like if I only wanted to interrogate controls or even a particular control, I could do that. If I only wanted to look at policies, I could do that. That can be interesting if I wanted to answer questions, for example, about what I'm doing in theory, right? Which is what the policies are. And let's say I wanted to see what's actually happening, I could limit it to just looking at evidence. And then here in the middle is our chat window. So the next person we're going to take a look at is compliance managers. And so, for these folks, we can add a multifunctional AI assistant. And so the kinds of things that these folks have to look after: internal audit, evaluating existing security policies and procedures, reviewing configs, identifying gaps and vulnerabilities, monitoring systems for compliance, and tracking remediation efforts. And so what we're going to show here for this person is how they could actually do a portion of a regulation design assessment. So basically looking at the policies that are in this environment and say, hey, how do I stack up with this other framework? They can also use it to understand the state of their environment. And then they can also use it to assist with gap analysis. So I will jump back in then to the demo environment and we'll show off that part. Okay, so I'll start a new chat here for this person. And we'll start out by answering a couple of questions that would kind of show off how we can do a design assessment. There's another way we do this as well, but I'm showing you guys this in a very bite-sized fashion, but we have a way to actually do this in bulk and very quickly. But this, I think, helps really illustrate some of the power and what the system can do. So some of you all may be familiar with a regulation called FFIEC. If a organization was trying to figure out, hey, do I comply with that? What they would do, and we can assist with this, is they would ask questions like this. So does the accounts policy set cover explaining to employees that they should not use unsanctioned IT resources, rogue or shadow IT, in accordance with FFIEC section blah, blah? And so this is the start of doing a design assessment. How do we stack up against this set of requirements for FFIEC? This will help us understand, hey, how far away am I from being in compliance with FFIEC? And just like we've seen before, it will go and thoroughly address the question. It says the company has policies that address several aspects of acceptable use, security, and compliance. However, there's no specific mention of policies explicitly covering the prohibition or management of unsanctioned IT resources, also known as rogue or shadow IT. In alignment with this, the acceptable use policy broadly outlines some stuff, but basically it's saying, yeah, you don't have something that covers this specifically. So if I were doing a design assessment on this aspect of FFIEC, I'd probably note this down as, okay, looks like we have an opportunity to address this, tighten that part of our policy up, specifically cover that part of the policy to make sure that we're covering that. Here's another example of a question like this that we could ask. We're asking a question about encryption and making sure that the encryption is commensurate with the sensitivity of the information. And like you might expect, again, because this account has so many different InfoSec controls and policies in place, you can see that it covers implementing encryption that is commensurate with security, etc. And then it goes on to explain effective use of cryptography, rules that determine the type, strength, quality of the algorithms, etc. And then once again, it's going to cite its sources here and tell you, yeah, there's stuff in this policy and this other policy that cover that. So that's how somebody could do some work to help start a design assessment. We also have a capability to ask questions in bulk, and we actually offer up these types of design assessment questionnaires so that somebody can actually do a ton of these in a short amount of time. So think asking hundreds of questions like this and getting answers back, in 30 minutes to an hour, which in our experience is incredibly fast for this kind of work. It can often take hours per policy just to evaluate whether a policy is in compliance with a particular regulation. So with this capability, we can actually answer questions like that in minutes. Okay. So I'll move on then to another question. So understanding the state of the environment help make decisions. So in this case, I'm going to ask a question about how we're doing on the aspect of our HR compliance. So have all required employees had a background check within the SOC 2 Type 2 review period. So have we actually done what we're supposed to do in terms of the background checks on hire? And you'll see here, yes, all required employees have had a background check within the review period. And it goes on to explain a bunch of details, including a policy. And it also cites a particular piece of evidence, and so this is a demo environment here, but you can see, yep, here's all the background checks. Here's when it started. Here's when it was completed. So it's able to find that for you. So in here, I can actually click on this piece of evidence and ta-da, here it is. I can see here's all the people. Here's when, the background check started. Here's when they completed, etc. So answer questions like that. And then one more for our compliance manager. Now, I think this is an interesting one. Depending, there's all kinds of routes into compliance. People have different backgrounds. And so I think from the compliance person standpoint, this is often how a question like this would be worded. So are any of our network settings too permissive compared to our requirements? So really kind of taking compliance view on it is this meeting our compliance requirements? And so we'll ask a question that's phrased that way. And then we'll see here in a moment the way somebody else might ask a similar question. It responds with, yes, there are indications that some of our network settings might be too permissive compared to our requirements. Specifically, there are unresolved issues regarding AWS network configuration security gaps, such as the use of anywhere ingress rules, which do not be allowed according to security policies. This was highlighted in an issue. Our system also can evaluate all kinds of evidence. So in this case, it's a screenshot, and you can see, okay, we've got some AWS network config stuff going on here. We got a VPC, and we've got ingress rules that are saying allow from anywhere. And so the system was able to pick that up and say, yeah, that's not going to work. You need to tighten up some stuff there. So that's the kind of the level at which a compliance type person, compliance manager type, would be able to ask a question and get a answer that's phrased in a way that is directly answers that question. So that's what we've got for the compliance manager.